Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack the hidden architecture of our daily digital lives. We're looking at some absolutely fascinating new psychological research by Felix Azucenoeder. This study completely shifts how we think about social media. We're moving away from just seeing these apps as handy tools, and instead, we're going to look at them as incredibly powerful, immersive learning environments.
So, let's dive right in with a massive question, one that really gets to the core of how these platforms actually function. Why does a simple app have so much power over our minds? Right? I mean, we all feel it. That magnetic pull to check our phones, that little rush when you get a new notification, or even the sting of being ignored online. Well, the mechanics behind all of that are actually deeply rooted in fundamental psychological learning theories.
To answer that, we've structured this explainer into 5 clear steps to help you visualize exactly how these apps quietly shape our behaviors. We're going to cover the invisible digital environment, the unconscious classroom, learning through feedback, learning through observation, and finally, reclaiming our digital world.
Let's jump into Section 1, the invisible digital environment, more than just a hangout. Okay, first things first, we really need to understand what researchers call the communicative infrastructure, or CI. Basically, this represents all the different elements on a social network site that allow users to communicate. But here's the kicker. It's not just a random collection of chat boxes and picture feeds. It is an omnipresent, totally invisible environment. Think of it like this. Just like walking into a physical room completely alters how you act, this digital architecture is the actual space where all of our digital behaviors, our self-presentation, and our social interactions are completely embedded. Take a look at the core properties that make this infrastructure so uniquely impactful. First off, it connects us to massive, really information-rich networks instantly. Second, it enables anytime, anywhere communication with practically zero barriers. There are literally no office hours, no physical distances to worry about. And third, it makes almost all of that communication highly visible to a massive number of contacts, and for a very long period of time. This infrastructure is a real game changer because it essentially puts our entire social lives on public display nonstop. Moving right along to Section 2, the unconscious classroom, how we learn without trying. So on these sites, you aren't exactly sitting down to study like you would for, say, a biology exam. Instead, the vast majority of our behavioral shifts happen through what's called implicit learning. This is a process where we process input without any conscious intention whatsoever. It literally takes place entirely unconsciously. We just kind of absorb the rules of society, what's funny, what's socially acceptable, what's trendy, as a completely unintended side product of just mindlessly scrolling through our feeds. But wait. How does a random post actually teach us something? Well, for all that endless digital noise to actually train us, it has to seamlessly pass through 3 strict preconditions to become an effective learning input. First up is availability. Basically, the information just has to exist digitally in your specific space and time. Second is perception. You have to encounter and subconsciously process it. And honestly, platform designs heavily encourage this with endless scrolling and super bright colors. And third, relatedness. It must connect to your personality, your goals, or your values. When all 3 of these perfectly align, bam, that digital noise becomes an incredibly potent learning tool.
And that brings us to Section 3, learning through feedback, the power of likes and trolls.
Sociologist Irving Goffman had this fantastic theatrical metaphor that explains this perfectly. He called it a front stage performance. Think about it. On social networks, almost every single post, photo, or comment is a behavior performed in front of a live, judging audience. We are constantly on stage, and our audience is technologically empowered to react instantly to whatever we do.
Because we're always performing on this stage, our behavior is instantly modified by a pretty stark contrast. You have deeply rewarding validation on one hand and highly punishing rejection on the other. We naturally learn to repeat behaviors that earn us rewarding feedback, the sweet likes, shares, and glowing comments. Conversely, we quickly learn to suppress behaviors that draw punishing feedback, like derogatory comments, cyber harassment, or even just the deafening silence of being totally ignored by our peers. Ouch.
Think about that perfectly recognizable check for updates pull-down mechanism on your phone. It physically grounds the exact psychology we're discussing here. It represents this relentless, immediate feedback loop that keeps our brain's reward structures constantly activated. The absolute immediacy and continuous availability of this feedback make it an incredibly powerful tool for modifying our behavior. Honestly, we're basically training ourselves with every single tap.
And guys, the real-world consequences of this are incredibly severe. Whether it's the intense high of a viral post or the devastating blow of cyber harassment, this instantaneous feedback learning has severe, documented impacts on our overall mental health. Positive feedback triggers a massive cerebral reward and can very easily lead to addiction. That addictive use then tanks your sleep quality and totally spikes anxiety. On the flip side, receiving fewer likes or getting negative feedback is linked to severe depression and deep feelings of rejection. The architecture is literally wiring our mental health to the whims of an anonymous online crowd.
Let's look at Section 4, Learning Through Observation, the ultimate comparison trap.
Think about a random party photo on your feed. You might just think you're casually looking at a friend's milestone, but subconsciously, that simple snapshot at a graduation party is actively teaching viewers dress codes, cultural norms, table manners, and personal taste. You aren't just seeing friends having fun. You are implicitly learning the rules of social acceptability without even realizing it. Literally, every piece of shared media acts as a potential learning example. Over time, everyday users and relatable digital influencers become our ultimate role models. They construct this powerful sense of digital identity and societal expectation. And unlike traditional, distant Hollywood celebrities, influencers actually feel like peers. You identify with them, right? This perceived interconnectedness makes their lifestyles, their consumer choices, and their everyday behaviors incredibly potent templates for our own lives.
We absolutely have to recognize the immense dangers of this observational learning, though. Because people inherently curate only their best moments online, it creates a devastating comparison trap. These feeds present a positively biased, completely unrealistic view of life. So we end up engaging in upward social comparisons that completely lower our self-esteem and overall well-being. In fact, studies even show that following influencers is directly linked to envy and feelings of inferiority. It makes us evaluate our own, completely normal lives as somehow inadequate. And this comparison trap can become incredibly targeted and dangerous. The research specifically highlights that because our culture highly values physical attractiveness and thinness, social networks uniquely amplify disordered eating behaviors through this continuous, comparative visual learning. Users are just constantly bombarded with fitness routines and diet successes. It basically creates an environment where harmful behaviors are naturally displayed, continuously observed, and tragically internalized by vulnerable users.
All right, finally, let's move to Section 5, Reclaiming Our Digital World, Designing for the User.
So how in the world do we fix this immense psychological machinery? Well, the key takeaway here is that these digital environments aren't naturally evil. In fact, they can actually foster incredibly positive social support and political participation. But regulators and users must address the extreme power imbalance between the platform owners and the public. We literally must radically redesign this infrastructure to prioritize user well-being over corporate profit and blind engagement metrics. It's time we start treating our digital environments with the exact same care and regulation we apply to our physical ones. And I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider as you close this explainer and inevitably open your favorite app. Will the digital environments of tomorrow be built for their owners or for us? Honestly, it's a question that is going to define our future mental health. Thank you so much for joining me today to explore the invisible machinery of our digital world. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.